Welcome to another edition of the Better Than I Found It podcast. I'm Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor, and thank you for joining me today. Today's guest is McLennan Community College golf coach Vince Clark. Vince is a three-time GCAA National Championship coach and a 2016 GCAA Hall of Fame inductee. He is, however, much more than just his coaching record. In my opinion, Vince is one of the best college golf coaches, period. He understands so very well the concept of going to a player's heart, and Vince does as good a job of developing a family culture within his team as any coach I've ever seen. He's definitely a coach that I look to for advice and counsel, and I really think you'll enjoy hearing his philosophies and perspectives on coaching and leadership. Let's get right to the interview. Good morning, Vince Clark. Welcome to Better Than I Found It. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, Mike, it's my pleasure. I loved your book, and I've listened to all the podcasts, so I'm a fan.
Oh, so you are a podcast person, huh?
I like what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I like that. Well, I obviously like what you're doing, and that's the reason you're on this podcast today. But we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today relative to coaching, a little bit about your past, and some things you think are important in coaching. But I'd like to start by just telling people who you are. I mean, I've told them who you are in the introduction, but tell me a little bit about your birth, where you were born, your childhood, how you got into golf, all that story, if you would.
Mike, I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, in the Ozark Mountains. My family had a house in town, but my father, who was a lawyer, he was also a federal judge, he had a farm outside of town. We had horses and cattle, so by Texas standards, I guess it was a ranch.
It was a ranch, wasn't it? That's nice.
Actually, his idea of having fun hanging out with me would be to spend a cold, wet day outside at the farm fixing fence.
So was that your idea of a good time?
It was not. Actually, when I was our player's age, I thought my father worked me entirely too hard. But I look back on it now, and I'm doing 2 full-time jobs for McLennan, and I don't even draw breath. And Mike, I think that's because of the work ethic and the discipline that my father instilled in me. And I know you have some of that in your background as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's great when you have a father who showed you by example what hard work looks like. At least you had the example of it, and he obviously sort of asked you to do some of those things too. But he got you started in a life of where hard work does matter, and it does provide a lot in this world. So
he also liked to play golf. He's no longer alive. My mother is still alive, and she's the nicest person I've ever met in my whole life. She's remarried to a wonderful guy. They live on a farm in the Ozarks still, but she plays golf.
Oh, wow.
Her parents played. In fact, my grandfather was a champion, and he taught me the game. In fact, the only book I ever saw him read was Golf My Way by Jack Nicklaus, and the only reason he read it, Mike, was because he knew how much I loved Jack, and he thought that would be a good way to help him introduce me to the game.
That is really great. You know, it's funny. That's one thing. You and I have a lot in common. We are basically the same age, but our childhood golf hero was the same. I mean, Jack Nicklaus was much like Tiger Woods has been for this last generation. I mean, when you thought about it, Jack Nicklaus was the perfect example of what excellent golf looked like in our day. So it's fun to watch.
I've still got my grandfather's copy of that book. Well, but my father, I guess we continue the story. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer, and so I played golf. Pretty good player, competitive, but I came to Baylor. My father had a law clerk from Baylor, and he was really impressed with the school, especially the law school. So I came down to Baylor. I still played golf, but I wasn't working hard on my game anymore.
What years were you here? About 79 to 83?
That's it, exactly.
Okay.
In 83, I was a history major. I graduated Bachelor of Arts, and then I went to law school at Baylor. I graduated law school. I passed the bar. I moved over to Tyler in East Texas, which is where our friend Greg Priest went after he left Baylor.
That's right.
And I went to work as a trial lawyer. I did only civil work, no criminal work. In fact, I was mainly insurance defense. So, Mike, if you were in a car accident and you got sued, your insurance company would hire me to represent you. Or if a hospital got sued for malpractice, the insurance company would bring me in to defend them. Or if a manufacturer got sued over their product, it was my job to come in and defend them. So,
well, this doesn't sound like you were a golf coach. You weren't headed toward being a golf coach at this time.
No. I tried lawsuits for 5 years. I did have a little bit more time and I was able to play a little bit of golf. I still wasn't working hard on my game. I joined a beautiful old country club over there, Willowbrook. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've seen it. It's wonderful.
Beautiful old style course. I love that. Mike, I was happy, but I thought I could be happier because I really wanted to be a teacher. So I gave my law practice back to my partners. I returned to Baylor, and I got a master's in history. I actually taught at Baylor for a year, and then I went to the University of Virginia for my PhD. And of course, once I quit practicing law and was a graduate student, I had all kinds of more time to begin working on my golf game again. And so I worked my game back down to just about scratch. I started competing in USGA qualifiers and Texas AM qualifiers, things like that. After Virginia, I came back to Waco. I got a job at McLennan Community College teaching history, I'm still doing that today for them.
How many years have you been teaching history?
20, this is my 26th year. I've taught 13,157 students.
Is that including this semester's students?
Including this semester.
Wow, that's an amazing. Do you know it? Do you know all their names?
I'm nodding my head. Yeah, okay. If somebody said, "Do you remember my name?" I always say, "I remember you."
Well, that's great. So 26 years teaching, but not all of that coaching. So how did coaching become a part of that? Because you came back to Waco to get a job at McLennan to teach history, but it wasn't to coach golf.
So I love golf, and I was out playing golf. I actually played with a couple of the Baylor guys occasionally, but I played mainly with the MCC golf team. Those guys were my students. I got to know some of the coaches. In fact, I became really good friends with Wendell Hudson, who was the athletic director. Like, your time in Alabama, Wendell was Hall of Fame Alabama guy, SEC Player of the Year. In fact, they just retired his jerseys. I think the only number they've ever retired over there. Wendell's. We got to be good friends. I think he said something to the head coach. Rick approached me and asked me if I'd like to get involved in the program. So I started as a volunteer assistant coach, and then I worked my way up to an assistant coach. And then in 2007, when Coach Butler retired, MCC asked me if I'd like to take over. And so I'm still teaching full-time for them, and I'm coaching golf full-time for them.
Well, it was a little different for me because I was a high school coach and a middle school teacher, but I did teach social studies and history in middle school, so we kind of had that going along the same path. And I remember enjoying teaching, but really enjoying getting out of the classroom to go working afternoons. But tell me about if you looked at both teaching and coaching. Do you look at them separately? Do you look at them as the same? Is that something? How do you think of that?
So, Mike, I think coaches are teachers. Anybody who's got an idea that it's something less different, I think they're just wrong, because all coaches are teachers, and that's a really good thing. The one significant difference is going to talk about golf, but we also end up talking about history too. It's really interesting.
Well, I think that the thing that I got out of history that was always so important is it can affect the future if you learn from that history. And so, but I think in golf you have to be able to do the same thing. If you can't learn from what you've been doing, then you're not going to be any better in the future. So you've got to take all those things in your past, that good and bad experiences, and bring the ones forward that are going to help you be a better player, a better coach, whatever. So I think having that in common with you is it's easy to talk to you because we both, and we're the same age. So it's, well, you're a year younger than I am.
I'm always very respectful.
Well, it's less than a year, but it is pretty similar. So I want to take that. Okay, so there's our backgrounds basically in history. You're an attorney. I was just a high school golf coach and a middle school teacher. But we both became teachers, and we both agree that a teacher is a coach and a coach is a teacher. So that's good. But when I got to Baylor, I knew you because I had probably one interaction with you when I was still at Oklahoma State. I think you were headed to a national championship team early in your career, I think, right? And we met at Post Recruiting. So I remember that was a good day. But I didn't really know you after that. And I got to Waco, and I knew you were in Waco, but we didn't have any interaction. What encouraged me to give you a call was two of the players that had played for you. One was Andrew Hands, and the other was Hunter Shattuck. And they were on the team. They overlapped 1 year. They were on the team at Baylor 1 year together, and all they could talk about was McLennan this, Highlanders that, Coach Clark this, Coach Clark that. And I kept on thinking, man, that guy's pretty impressive. So I probably should give him a call. But the main thing that they talked about was the family that McLennan Golf is. And I'm not talking about just the current team. I'm talking about former teams, future teams, all of it. And they talked with such reverence of that experience. I think I had to learn a little bit more. So I think I took you to lunch one time and you started talking to me about it. So if you could, for me and for my listeners, talk to me about how you created what is truly a family within McLennan College, Highlander, if you will, past, present, future players.
So I think in terms of the operations, how it happens is a recruit comes to McLennan. It doesn't matter whether I'm recruiting him or he's recruiting me, because I'm going to treat everybody exactly the same. But one of the first things that I tell them is that my players are brothers. You plant that seed in the very beginning, and then if they come and play for us, then they already have that notion, and they can see what's going on around them, because the guys, they live together, they go to class together, they practice together, they play together. In essence, we spend so much time so close that we are just like a family. And by enforcing that, I mean, just literally making it literal, this is what we do, then they're not like brothers. They become brothers. But actually, Mike, that whole family notion, as we've talked about before, is it's part of a larger sense of priorities for me. I can remember when my first year as head coach, and I was teaching in the mornings, I was coaching in the afternoons. About the only time I could recruit was nights and weekends and holidays. So, and I was doing everything I was supposed to do, but I was running from place to place, and I didn't feel like I had control over the vision or the mission for what I was trying to do. And I can remember coming home from Houston one Sunday night, Mike. I'd been down at Redstone. Is that Houston National?
It's called the Golf Club of Houston now.
Golf Club of Houston. Mm-hmm. I had my lectures already prepared for Monday morning, so I didn't have to think about that. And so I thought I could focus on coaching golf and just trying to get an idea about what my priorities were. Mike, do you remember John Wooden?
Oh, yeah. I mean, John Wooden has had a huge impact on my career. I've read every book about him or by him, for sure.
Yeah. So UCLA, for your younger listeners, he's the UCLA head coach. He won I think 10 national championships. Mike, you could probably tell me every single year.
He did. He won 10 in 12 years. Now, he didn't win until his 16th year at UCLA, the first time he won a national championship. But yes, an amazing coach.
So he was this iconic figure, and all coaches, all sports looked up to him. He organized his coaching priorities in something he called the Pyramid of Success. Do you remember that?
I do.
When I was playing football, middle school football and high school golf, I can remember that almost every single coach had John Wooden's Pyramid of Success taped up to their office door. I mean, this was just a really big deal. So I was thinking to myself, I need to figure out some way to organize my own coaching priorities. And I don't need a pyramid. So what I came up with, Mike, was like a compass. Try to figure out 4 main points on the compass. So this is like my coaching compass, and family was part of that.
How early in your career is this? I mean,
first fall of my head coaching career.
So it's right there in the early part. Were you wandering aimlessly before, or what were you doing with that?
We're not going to tell anybody it was aimlessly, but it probably was very aimlessly. So I needed some help with navigation, and what I mean by that is I just think it's important to identify your priorities, and then it helps you sort of shape everything else you're doing for the good, for the better of everybody, I think. For me, the first point on my coaching compass was east. That's where the sun comes up, and that's the game. Mm-hmm. I think golf is the most beautiful game ever conceived.
I agree with you on that one.
So first of all, it's played outdoors, and I love being outside. Secondly, most of the places we play are pretty. In fact, to me, even something someone might label a goat ranch, to me, has a simple beauty about it. And then also the people who are associated with golf, like you and Miguel and your players, my players, they're good people to be around. So that you've got this sort of win-win-win going with golf. But what I really love about it is the essence of the game. I love challenge. It's something you and I have talked about before. We like challenge. And I think that's the essence of the game. I think golf provides these feels of challenge. First, you've got the golfer versus the elements. We have to play in the wind, the rain, the hot, the cold. And so that's part of the challenge that we have to deal with. You've also got the golfer versus the course. And some of that has to do with the architect. And you're trying to navigate your way around the course intelligently. But it also is about the condition of the course. Because, I mean, Mike, sometimes we play courses that are first-rate, top-level. Sometimes we play courses that are not as well received. Sometimes the fairways are green. Sometimes they're dormant. Sometimes the greens are smooth as glass. Sometimes they're punched. We have to play them all. What do you think?
I would like to not interrupt, but just interject, if you will. So one of the things I tell our guys is this. If you're worried about the condition of the golf course, if the condition of the golf course means more to you than the competition going on there, then you got a problem. You got it flipped. The condition of the golf course shouldn't have anything to do with it. You're there for the competition. Now, I remember being at the British Boys Championship recruiting in 2006. Pardon me. Yeah, it was 2006. And this young man had lost a match, and I was out watching the final match, and he was watching it also. And the golf course was burnt out in spots. It was dry in some areas. But it had an unbelievable natural beauty that I was just stunned. And it was Royal Aberdeen in Scotland, just a gorgeous golf course. And it occurred to me that this boy walked up and he says, "Isn't this place amazing, Coach? This is one of the most amazing golf courses I've ever seen. It's in a great condition." And I thought to myself, I think so. But our players have been conditioned to think that if it's not every blade of grass perfect, that it's not in good condition. That's wrong. Here's a boy who understands what the condition of golf course ought to be in. We've been just spoiled. So anyway, to reiterate what you were saying, I think we think golf courses should be perfect. but that's not what it should be. And life isn't that way, and neither is any round of golf. And so when you get to a golf course and the first thing you do is say, oh, these greens are bad, you're going to have a bad week. So I try to get that through to our players.
So the flip on that, Mike, is that this is just a challenge. And how many times in your lifetime, think about your players too, I'll bet it's the exact same. When somebody comes up to you and says, you can't do this, or I bet I can beat you. And, that's the challenge. Well, you look at the course conditions and you think, now there's another challenge. That to me is just the essence of the game. Now my favorite challenge in golf, it's the most fun, is the golfer versus other golfers. And that's what you're talking about in terms of the competition. It's match play, stroke play. That's just fun. The most important challenge in golf is probably also the hardest one to overcome. And it's actually the one where I think you are the best. It's the golfer versus himself or herself.
Very much so.
Because you've got to manage your expectations and emotions and decisions. And that's difficult to do, even sometimes on the best of days. But you are really good at helping people through that.
I appreciate you saying
Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think it's been an area that I've focused on that has been important to me because it's where I failed as a player. It's where I couldn't handle that as a player. So I always knew that when I was working with players, if I could get them to at least look introspectively, deal with that part of what's going on in the game, that they would help. But I think that's great that you've taken on this coaching compass of yours, you've taken golf and put it east. That's when the sun comes up. That's great. What are the other direction, though? I mean, I want to know what the other directions are.
So south on my coaching compass is health, which should be important to everybody. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, professional health. But here, Mike, it's not, these points of the compass are not isolated from one another because they can actually overlap. This is sort of like south-southeast.
I got you.
Golf is this great platform for health. You and I both get up really early in the morning. Are you still working out in the mornings?
Not as effectively or as intense as I used to, but yes, I still do something.
Okay, so when I get up, I go run every morning. I run 4 miles every morning. Well, actually, I don't run anymore. I just kind of waddle.
Yeah, well, it's
a duck.
You're moving.
A duck could outrun me now.
Okay.
I tell you. So, but on days that I'm not teaching and I don't have something else to do, as soon as I finish running, I go to the golf course. I tee off a little after dawn by myself. I try to play at least 9 holes. Now, I guess this is an extension of my physical exercise because I'm always walking, but it's more than that because, Mike, I mean, think back on the days when you were working for your dad. The golf course is empty. The sun's coming up. It's clean. It's fresh.
I had 1,000 of those days. I still remember them. They were great.
Well, so I just find this. I play by myself. I don't play with people anymore because I don't want to subject them to my game. Actually, you know what? I'm not swinging that bad. My shots look really good in the air, and then they hit the ground, and they're so close to me. That's just really painful.
Yeah, you're not getting any. Your golf shots are not going to get any longer. I think we're probably going the other direction.
But it's also this. It's an opportunity. It's like mental health as well. I find the peace and that's really important to me. At west on my compass is excellence. And here's another one that I think that you're right on top of. You have done a great job of helping me keep excellence in perspective. There are just people who are driven to try to be excellent. I'm one of those guys. My students in class pay tuition. They're not paying for my B game or my C game. They're paying for my A game. And so I work hard to try to give them my very best. Actually, I think I can be a better professor. And so I've been doing this 26 years. I'm still working hard trying to be better. My players, like your players, they deserve our very best as coaches. And So I am driven to try to be an excellent coach. I think I can be better. So I'm working hard to keep trying to be a better coach.
Are you 60 or 59?
I'm 59 for about 40 more days.
Well, let's say you coach until you're 70. I think you'll be better then. If you keep this west direction here, this excellence going, you should be better then than you are now.
So the idea is, one of the things I find it in your book, I find it in your podcasts, and it's part of it's the humility of your message, because you're being really genuine about this. You are working so very hard just to keep being better and better, and not just as a coach and a teacher. You're trying to work hard to be a better person too. So one of the things that's important for me in terms of my coaching priorities is to help my guys keep this drive for excellence in perspective. And if you keep working hard, Mike, sometimes that means a trophy, sometimes it means a ring, a national championship, or a record, but sometimes it doesn't. And it's still a worthy goal. Sometimes it's helping a student realize understanding people means they need to study history, or maybe it's helping a player understand that the essence of the game is challenge. I don't know, but you help me keep my drive for excellence in perspective, which helps me help my players keep it in perspective. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes total sense, and it's just that it's not evolution, but that continuum where you're just getting better and better and better. But it's an effort. There's something you're doing all the time to try to get better, and that includes the way you treat people, it includes the relationships you have, it includes the way you handle good things, bad things, wins, losses, whatever. That's all a part of this excellence we're talking about. I look back at my dad, and my dad was just a simple country club professional. He raised 7 children on that salary and just went through that. But you could see when he went to the golf course every day, it was about excellence for him. He was going to be a great club professional. He was going to teach lessons well. He was going to just whatever he did, he was trying to do the best he could. I know you're a great professor, and I've never taken one of your classes, but I need to do that. I need to probably if you teach a World War II class, I think I could.
I'll let you teach it.
Oh, no, I'd love to take that class. But anyway, so I love one of your directional indicators is west, and it's excellence. That's great. I think about that all the time.
The most important point on every compass is north, and that's because to navigate, you have to find true north. So on my coaching compass, north for me is sustenance. And what I mean by that is what sustains me. Now, I'm not talking about food, although I don't mind talking about food because I love to eat, and in fact I am always hungry. I think something's wrong with me because I don't know if it's because I hang around all these young guys.
It's okay. A hungry tiger hunts best.
Okay, well,
so you're okay.
I'm not blessed with your metabolism, Mike, and so I have to be careful about what I eat. If I didn't, I'd be as big as a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade balloon.
There you go.
What I'm talking about in terms of sustenance is what sustains me. What gives my life meaning. Now, you and I are men of faith. So our relationship with Jesus Christ sustains us.
For sure.
It's larger than anything else. If all you have is golf, if golf is all you have that sustains you, then you better prepare yourself for a wreck of a roller coaster of a life. My faith, our faith, is larger than golf. It gives our life meaning. It actually sustains us. Now, for the two of us, in terms of our coaching, it's a little bit different. Because you're over here at my alma mater, Baylor, which is a faith-based institution.
Sic 'em Bears.
Sic 'em. But so you can approach your faith and your team in a different way than I'm allowed to, because I'm at a state school.
Right.
when I became a lawyer, I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And I believe that it is at least implied in the First Amendment that there's a separation between church and state. And so I take that really serious. I can remember, Mike, early on when you and I started talking, you had a dream or a goal. I don't remember if maybe they're the same thing, but one of the things you talked about was you would like to take your team on a mission trip someday. And I just thought that was absolutely amazing, brilliant. How extraordinary a lesson that would be, especially in terms of what players need to sustain them. I don't know if do you remember that?
I remember that very well. We haven't gotten that accomplished, but I think we will at one point. We need to kind of get COVID behind us to make that happen, but I think it could happen.
So that's the kind of thing that I would not be in a position to do since I'm at a state school. You remember when you were at Oklahoma State, so you had to
definitely
you had to walk that same line.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because that's really the reason I picked Baylor when I had other options. In the summer of 2000, or late spring and early summer of 2014, there were several good Division I head coaches jobs that were open and that I applied for and interviewed for. But Baylor was the obvious choice for me just because of the faith. I wouldn't have to separate the two anymore, and you're not just encouraged, but you're actually almost expected to share your faith here. So I like that. But I was okay doing it at Oklahoma State because then it became your example. Your walk would do all the talking you needed if you were walking well. So I love your coaching compass. I love the fact that due north, the most important direction that gives you absolute focus on your life is faith.
So one other thing that sustains me is my family, and I grew up with a really large family, lots of uncles and aunts and cousins, and we got together often. And I mean, I reveled in that. It was so much fun. Now I'm in a place in my life where my family is growing much smaller. I mean, that's the cycle of life, which actually makes them even more important. And the memories of my family are so very important to me. So that leads back to what you and I went to lunch over the very first time. I was thinking to myself, what can I give my guys to help sustain them that's larger than golf? What if I could create for them a second family? In terms of college experience, some of the best friends, the closest friends that I have are from my Baylor days. In fact, my brother Mike, he's my brother by choice, not by blood. He's got his two sons call me uncle. One of them's named for me. He and I are as close as we can possibly be. That friendship helps sustain me. I thought, well, you know what? If I could give my guys that same kind of a lifelong friendship, that would be very special. You think about it, our freshmen are moving to college. For most of them, it's the first time
they've been away from
home.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you've got a second family in place, then that kind of takes a little bit of the edge off. In terms of classes, I'm the academic advisor for my guys, and so I put them in classes together where I can. It's a college professor, it's a college level class. That can be intimidating. But if you're looking around your left and your right, and there you see a couple of your brothers sitting there, they can help you get up and get to class, or they can help you through the class. I don't know. I think it gives them some comfort. It's better for them.
Well, when I look back on it, and the reason that we had that lunch that first time together was Hunter Shattuck and Andrew Hands, and talking about you and about the family and about how important McLennan golf was to them, it was obvious to me there was something a little different. So you talked to me one time about some text threads you have of former teams. So talk about that a little bit, because that's a pretty great way to keep in touch.
So when the guys graduate from McLennan and move on, I put them in an individual or a text group by year. So 2020, 2019, 2018, and on. Then on Sundays, I send out what they call the Sunday text, and it just to each group, I send them, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Or my dogs just got sprayed by skunks again. I hope you're okay. And then that gives the guys an opportunity to not only stay connected to me, but they also can stay connected with each other. So, for example, if somebody has a baby, they send out a picture of the baby, and then everybody's texting, congratulations, and it's a good thing that the kid looks like your wife instead of you. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Or last spring, Mike, one of my boys got laid off because of COVID. The very next day, two of his brothers went and picked him up and took him to play golf, just to spend the day with him.
That's amazing. That's great.
So it also helps me coach. This last fall, we had a wet cold snap come through in October. And you're going to remember this, Mike, because that is the time when you went around the course with Luke Dawsey. You remember it got really wet, really cold, nasty. Well, we practiced on that Monday, and I told the boys that, listen now, we're going to qualify tomorrow. We're going to qualify on the next day. Now, the sophomores, of course, knew that was coming. But the freshmen, they're like blinking and looking at each other, and are you sure, Vincer? And I said, absolutely, I'm sure, because we have to play in that weather in competition, and so we're going to qualify in it. But I could tell that their hearts were not convinced and in it. So that night, Mike, I actually sent out a Monday text to each of the groups and said, hey, we're going to play a cold, wet qualifier tomorrow. The sophomores know what to expect, but the freshmen don't. Do you have any words of wisdom? And my phone just started exploding with all of these answers, these texts from all of the older brothers. So I was copying and pasting to the team. We played the next day in the cold. I was walking with one of the groups, and one of the freshmen looked over at me and he said, this really isn't that bad. And another one said, no, I feed off the energy. I like this. And now they are wearing that round like a badge of honor, just like their brothers did before them. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And that's how a culture is built over time, how a culture is built from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. And somebody you coached 10 years ago has that same thought, the same feeling, had that same experience that the kid is having this fall when it's cold. He feels the same.
So they help me coach up the family.
They do. That's amazing. I really, really do appreciate that. And you telling me that. I've used a little bit of that, honestly, since you first told me about that. I do a better job of communicating. But I think it's important, and I tell this to young coaches all the time. I don't know what your career is going to look like as a coach, but just make sure when it's over and you're no longer coaching, that in your cell phone, in that address book in the cell phone, every kid that you've coached is in there, and that you would be a welcome addition to his cell phone address book.
Mike, again, it's one of the things I admire about you, and I try to emulate it. Your program here at Baylor has never been about you. You have always made it about your players, and if they have to be honest and reflect on it, but everything you do is to help them be better, to keep not just in terms of golf, but in terms of as students and in terms of people, the health, all the points on my compass is something that you try to do in your program, trying to help your guys be better.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. But this is the first time you've told me about this compass today. It's interesting. You've been hiding that from me. Why have you been hiding that from me?
I'm old and I forget stuff.
I think you've just been giving me, spoon feeding me just a little bit at a time. But I do appreciate that very much. And it's very nice of you to say that. I feel like when I got to Baylor, I wanted to do something similar to that. And we've worked kind of tandem, together to learn from each other. And that's another point I want to bring to. You are a Hall of Fame coach, okay? You've won 3 national championships. You're not even close to being through with your career. But a lot of people don't know who you are in the world of college golf. Maybe in the junior college world, yes, they do. But and so does it ever bother you or have you ever had a thought, I need to go be a Power 5 conference coach? I've got to do that if I'm going to be successful. I think I know the answer to this, but go ahead and let me know.
So, the answer is no. I'm happy where I am, And I'll tell you why. Because I think this is where I belong. I think the guys who are coming to play at McLennan, I think I am there for them. They need somebody like me in this moment in time, and in this point in their college and golfing career. And so I just believe that this is where I'm supposed to be. You think about it, because the reason I'm at McLennan is because I went to Baylor, because I am a lawyer, because I'm no longer a lawyer, because I teach history, and I also used to play a good game of golf. But all of those, you connect all of those dots, and that brings me to McLennan Community College in Waco. I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Well, you are in a good spot. And as I look back on my career when I was a high school golf coach, still have some of the greatest memories of my coaching career. Some of the deepest relationships I've had with players are from that time. So I consider that just as important as anything I'm doing today, for sure. And I'm just a more experienced coach who's done a lot more, seen a lot more, been down that road a few more times. But these players I coach now are not any more important in the long run as the players I coached 30 years ago. And I hope that they all are important to me.
So forgive me if I just every now and then launch into cross-examination.
Okay,
it's just
please.
An old habit.
You're an attorney.
But Mike, listen to yourself. You keep talking about the players. It doesn't matter whether they're high school players or Oklahoma State players or Alabama players or Baylor players or McLennan players. I mean, your focus is on the players. I hope you are where you want to be here at Baylor, because I like having you over here as a neighbor. But I can promise you, because of my players, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I've mentored a lot of young coaches for over about 20 years now. And I was a young coach at one time and had some coaches mentor me. So I think that's a very important part of what we do. You and I are at a stage of our career where we both are still competitive. We still want to win championships. We still want to build championship teams. But there's also an element of wanting to give back. And so you're giving back in a lot of different ways. One, you continue to pour into players' lives, which is what you do all the time. But to me, if I don't give back to the profession by helping younger coaches get better, then I'm failing them. I really am. And one of the things I want younger coaches to remember, to know, to realize is don't get into coaching because you want to be a Power 5 conference coach. You come to me for advice, Coach, I want to be where you are one day. Well, that's fine. But there's a lot of water got to go into that bridge between now and then. Don't miss those experiences. Don't miss the opportunity to work with a kid at the junior college level, to work with a kid at the high school level, at any level. Coaching is coaching. And so if you take that attitude and you end up being a Power 5 conference, Division I national champion, great. But you can't have that, as you said on your first thing, if golf is the only thing. So if winning a national championship or coaching at a Power 5, if that's the only thing, then you're missing all the great opportunities to learn as a coach.
Yeah, isn't that really what drove you to write Better Than I Found It? Isn't that what your book is really about? The undercurrent, the main message there is, this is something I'm doing to give back.
Hopefully. It was therapy initially because
Okay.
I wanted to kind of make sense of my career and where it was going and what I'd done. But it was definitely I want to give back. And I hoped and prayed, and I still do, that other college coaches will jump outside their comfort zone or their wherever they are and write something about what they've learned in coaching. I was hoping it would encourage other coaches to write because I could learn reading from other coaches. There's tons of coaches I would love to learn from that are either better than I am or at least as good as I am that they could teach me. So yes, giving back is important. So I'm kind of twofold right now. I think of you as being the same. I think you still think you can win more championships.
Yes.
And you're striving for that.
Yes.
But I also think you're wanting to give back. And I hope other coaches look at it the same way. I could give back and make this profession better than it was before I got in.
Well, one of the things that a generation of players remembers about Jack Nicklaus is how generous he was in terms of guiding younger players. He didn't hide anything. He tried to help them, and then he turned around and tried to beat them. Mm-hmm. I mean, but so he didn't see them as being contradictory at all. That to him, this was the spirit of the game. And what you're talking about is just the spirit of our lives. It's just, there's nothing contradictory about it at all.
No, and if you had to hang your hat on how many national championships you've won, how many have you been to?
21 or however many years.
21 years. Okay.
I guess, or 17 or 18 years.
You've only won 3 national championships.
Correct.
It makes you a miserable failure 18 times.
Sad.
If winning is the only yardstick that you use to measure success. So I consider this, if every coach would look at a young player they worked with who was heading down a bad road, down the wrong path, having bad habits, making bad decisions, all of that, if that player became a success in life, and if you were part of the reason, maybe not all of it, but if you were part of that reason in his story as he got turned back on, that's worth so much more than any Coach of the Year award, national championship. All those things just fall by the wayside if you actually had an impact on changing the trajectory of a kid's life. Vince, you've done that with players, I know.
Thank you.
And I think that's what we need to hang our hat on, not on the national championships, which are very rare. They don't happen.
So again, just see how you keep the perspective on the players. The focus is always on the players. And we want to win a national championship. You and I love winning. That's what we do. But the priority is on the players first. Their lives first.
Well, thank you, Vince, for, one, for coming on the podcast today, but for two, for keeping the player first. Thank you for being a good example of that for me. You've encouraged me to do that and continue to do that. And I think if we both keep that in the forefront, I think all the coaching stuff and all the titles and all that other stuff kind of falls into place. So, but thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Before you leave, though, we're going to do a speed round. So
okay.
I've got to do a speed round with you. So before we get to that, again, thank you, Vince. When do you start your spring schedule? Just so I know, people will know.
February. We're waiting on COVID, to be honest with you. Yeah. So we're trying to set up tournaments for about the second week of February.
Okay, so you'll get started hopefully, and we're doing the same. I think we start January 25th, hoping to get going. But okay, speed round. So you can take as long as you want, but I'd like these to be reasonably quick. What pops into your head, ready to go?
Yes.
How many holes in one have you made?
2.
2, and the most recent?
5 years ago.
Okay. Favorite all-time golfer?
Jack Nicklaus.
Jack Nicklaus, same here. Ben Hogan, have a pretty good affinity for Ben Hogan?
He's number 2.
Yeah.
Or he's number 2.5.
Okay.
Arnold Palmer would be
excellent.
Number 2. So it's Jack, Arnie, and Ben.
Well, that our age, we just we go right to that. Okay. Favorite current player?
I love Rory. I love Jason Day. I love Justin Thomas. I'm rooting for Jordan Spieth to come back. Those guys
I think
are
a lot of Texans are. That would be great. Okay, favorite course you've played?
Be Twin Oaks Country Club in Springfield, Missouri, which is where I grew up and learned to play.
I played a mini tour event there in 1986.
Oh, that's brilliant!
Yeah.
Really,
I did. In fact, we finished on a Saturday, and Sunday, Jack Nicklaus won the Masters the next day. So I drove from Missouri over to Oklahoma and watched the final round.
That's neat.
You're a history teacher. Favorite president and why?
Probably George Washington, and the reason is because everything that could go wrong around him did. As a general, as a leader, as a president, everything was blowing up around him, and yet he stayed calm, steady, and he refused to give up. He was this tenacious survivor, and I really admire that about him.
And I completely agree with that. And I admired the fact that everything he did was setting precedent. He was the first president. Everything he did was like, this is groundbreaking. And that's hard to do because everything you do has a lot of implications. So, okay, I agree. He's my favorite president as well. Remember the Titans or Shawshank Redemption?
Shawshank Redemption.
Very nice. How many times have you watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
More than I can count.
Thank you.
How many times have you watched?
Probably 25. I mean, every politician should be made to watch that movie at least once a year. George Strait or Willie Nelson?
That's unfair.
That is unfair. That's pretty. You got to decide.
Could they sing a duet?
They could. Okay, we'll let them sing a duet. Okay, your dream foursome, last question. You and 3 others, who would they be?
I don't play with people anymore.
Okay.
So, and let's see, I'll tell you, since I'm going to just run with this, I'm going to watch. Let me watch a 5-ball.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to watch Bobby Jones
Okay.
at his prime
All right.
against Ben Hogan in his prime,
Ooh.
with Byron Nelson in his prime,
Okay.
Arnold Palmer in his prime,
Okay.
and I'd take Jack Nicklaus at any time. Maybe
Okay.
they could play a wolf game or something.
So
That'd
you're
be fun to
not
watch.
playing, you're watching those 5 play golf.
Let them play wolf. That would be fun.
Okay. Well, I like that. That's fair enough. And I'm just not playing much golf. At least you're playing. I need to play more golf. But anyway, so Vince, thank you so much. You've been very inspiring. You continue to do that. Best of luck to you and your team this year. And thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Mike, you're my good friend. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vince.